Welcome back to CSS Breakdown, Book by Book, Season 4. We're continuing our journey through Will Durant's Fallen Leaves with Episode 3, where we step out of youth and into the more grounded, well, reflective terrain of middle age.
That's right. It's a really pivotal stage, isn't it?
Absolutely. And today, our mission is to take a deep dive into the profound insights Durant offers on this stage of life. We're drawing exclusively from his reflections in Fallen Leaves' last words on life, love, war, and God. We're really here to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights from his observations, helping you understand the defining characteristics, the unique challenges, and maybe even the surprising fulfillments that come with middle age.
Yeah, those unexpected joys.
Exactly. We'll be unpacking how the world around us truly shifts when, well, responsibility starts to replace that useful passion, and how wisdom and contentment might just be found in some pretty unexpected places.
It's a fascinating journey, it really is. And Durant's reflections on middle age are remarkably sharp, often unsparing in their honesty, But ultimately, they offer this deeply contemplative look at a period of life that's frequently misunderstood.
Right. Misunderstood or maybe just overlooked.
Or maybe romanticized for its stability, or dreaded for losing that youthful spark. But Durant invites us to see it not as an end to anything good, really, but more as a crucial transformation. A fundamental reordering of priorities and perspectives that's as natural as it is, well, profound.
He definitely makes you confront some uncomfortable truths.
He does, but always aiming for deeper understanding, you feel.
Okay, so let's start right at that moment Durant identifies as the Great Divide. He makes this incredibly stark declaration about when youth definitively tips over into middle age. He asserts, almost with this finality, and so youth marries and youth ends.
Wow.
Yeah?
That's a bold statement, right? Incredibly blunt.
It really is. It frames marriage not just as, a social thing or personal choice, but as the biological and sociological marker for the start of middle age.
Yeah.
Why such an abrupt, such an absolute shift? It's like flipping a switch.
It is remarkably abrupt, and I think it speaks volumes about Durant's view that marriage just fundamentally reconfigures your entire existence. He even goes further, claiming a married person is already 5 years older the next day.
5 years.
And he applies that to men and women equally, which is noteworthy.
Sure.
This isn't just about counting birthdays. It's about this immediate, almost like you said, magical leap in perceived maturity. And maybe more importantly, in the responsibilities that are suddenly imposed on you.
The imposed part, that's key.
Exactly. The essence of this transformation, as Durant puts it, is that work and responsibility replace carefree play. That easygoing, exploratory phase of youth, where it's often about you, your interests, trying things out. That just gives way to the practical, often demanding realities of building a life, a family, running a household together. It's suddenly this heavy mantle of duty.
So it's way more than just your daily routine changing then. It's like a deep emotional, maybe even philosophical shift in your whole outlook.
Precisely. Durant captures this so concisely. He says, passion surrenders to the limitations of social order, and poetry yields to prose.
Poetry yields to prose.
Yeah.
I like that.
Think about it, right? Youth is typically the time for grand passions, unbridled idealism, poetic dreams, endless possibilities. You're driven by feelings, by what feels right, this sense of infinite potential. But marriage, with its commitments, its practical needs, its societal expectations, it demands a much more grounded, pragmatic approach, often less romantic. The abstract beauty of poetry, those untamed emotions, it just gives way to the practical, often mundane, sometimes unglamorous reality of prose.
It sounds a bit sobering.
It is sobering, but in Durant's view, it's an absolutely necessary shift, moving from being largely self-focused to being inherently bound by the needs and demands of others. Those societal roles, those expectations that marriage immediately throws at you, they fundamentally alter your daily life, your decisions, your whole perspective. It undeniably pushes you beyond that youthful freedom you once knew.
That makes a lot of sense, especially thinking about the traditional roles back when Durant was writing. But he does acknowledge this transition, this age leap, isn't exactly the same everywhere, right? He says it varies with customs and climates. How does he explain those variations?
Yeah, he offers some really interesting contrasts. They highlight how fluid these life stages can be across different cultures and times. In our modern cities, for instance, he observes that marriage comes late now and adolescence lengthens.
Which feels very true today.
Right. It suggests that longer education, maybe delaying full economic independence, pushes back the start of those specific responsibilities that used to mark the end of youth. More schooling, maybe living at home longer, more time dating, figuring yourself out.
Okay. And the contrast.
Well, among peoples of the South and East, Durant notes, marriage comes at the height of youth and age on the heels of parentage. So that paints a picture of a much faster, more compressed journey through life stages, where the big responsibilities of adulthood, parenthood, are taken on much, much earlier.
And he brings in G. Stanley Hall here, the psychologist. With a pretty striking observation about this faster pace, it sounds quite stark.
Yes, Hall's words, quoted by Durant, are quite stark, maybe even alarming to us now. He noted that young Orientals who exercise marital functions at 13 are worn out at 30 and have recourse to aphrodisiacs.
Wow.
And similarly, he observed that women in hot climates are often old at 30. The core idea from Hall, which Durant emphasizes, is that in the main, it is probable that those who mature late age late.
Okay, so later maturity, later aging.
It suggests this direct, interesting correlation. The longer your development, your adolescence, the later the onset of what we think of as aging and the responsibilities of real middle age. Durant then kind of runs with this, offering a compelling hypothesis. He says, perhaps if we could delay our sexual maturity till economic maturity has come,
Right.
we would, by lengthening adolescence and education, rise to a higher plane of civilization than the past has ever known.
A higher plane of civilization just by delaying maturity. That's a bold claim.
It is a bold claim about the potential for society to advance through basically a prolonged development.
That's genuinely fascinating and a bit provocative, especially thinking about today. If delaying sexual and economic maturity could potentially lead to this higher plane, more wisdom, more advanced thought, what does that mean for us right now? Because biologically, maturity often happens earlier, but economic independence, stable careers, marriage, that stuff is often delayed well into the 20s, even 30s.
Yeah.
It feels like we're kind of unintentionally running that exact experiment Durant was talking about on a massive scale.
That's an excellent point. It forces us to really think about this social experiment we're living through. Durant's hypothesis makes you wonder, is our extended adolescence, our longer education paths, taking on adult responsibilities later, is that actually contributing to a more complex, maybe more nuanced, potentially more civilized society, in his terms?
Are we getting more time to learn, explore ideas, develop critical thinking before we're fully, burdened by domestic and job duties?
Exactly. Are we? The flip side, of course, is that while that period of youthful idealism and exploration might stretch out, the responsibilities of middle age, when they do finally hit, might feel even heavier, right? Given the longer freedom that came before.
Like a bigger shock to the system.
Could be. It speaks to this fundamental tension between our biological clocks and the increasingly complex way we structure modern society. What do we gain and what do we lose when we stretch out youth? It's a question that really hits home today.
Okay, so if marriage is Durant's big dividing line, how does he then map out the whole landscape of life, not just the transition? He doesn't just focus on middle age alone. He steps back almost like a cartographer, charting the human journey, comparing and contrasting all the ages.
Right, he sets them side by side.
He introduces this Aristotelian framework, comparing his method to Aristotle's search for the golden mean, that sweet spot between two extremes. And he positions middle age not just as a transition, but as the central division of human life with its own fair phase. What does this comparison actually offer us? How does it help us appreciate what each age brings to the table?
It's a really powerful way to look at it, I think, because it lets us step back and see each stage having its own unique strengths and weaknesses, its own specific tasks and delights, as he calls them. By setting them against each other, Durant isn't just listing traits, he's building an argument for the inherent value of every phase, rather than seeing one as just better or worse than another.
So it's not a hierarchy.
Not really. This comparative view helps us see how qualities that might seem like flaws in one age, like, say, being wishy-washy in youth, can actually transform into virtues, like prudence in middle age, or the other way around.
Okay.
Now, Durant admits that making such a big list could risk piling truisms like pilion on ossa, just stating the obvious over and over again.
Right, piling mountains on mountains.
Exactly. But the real benefit, the big takeaway here is the consolation for middle age, that it is the epoch of achievement and establishment. It frames middle age not as winding down, but as a period of significant positive contribution, stability, and getting things done. Concrete accomplishment.
That's a really vital reframing, isn't it?
Hmm.
Especially when our culture often seems obsessed with youth.
Totally.
It shifts the focus away from feeling like you've lost something from youth and powerfully emphasizes what you've gained, what you're building. Let's dive into his detailed comparison table. It's pretty insightful how he breaks down the essence of each stage.
Absolutely. Let's start with how different ages approach thinking and knowing. Durant pegs youth as relying on instinct, imagination, theory.
Makes sense. Raw intuition, big ideas.
Exactly. Boundless creativity, grand ideas that often haven't been tested yet. Think of a young inventor with a brilliant but, unproven concept.
Okay, then middle age.
Middle age, in contrast, is characterized by induction, intellect, knowledge. This is where observing things, logical reasoning, rational thought that really comes to the forefront. It's the age of acquiring and applying concrete knowledge. Moving from abstract theories to practical understanding you've gained from experience, you're testing those youthful theories against reality.
Right, see what actually works.
And finally, old age is defined by deduction, memory, wisdom. Here, it's less about learning brand new things and more about synthesizing a lifetime of experience, drawing broad conclusions from all that stored knowledge, offering distilled wisdom.
Seeing the bigger patterns.
Seeing patterns that younger minds just can't perceive yet.
So middle age really is the intellectual engine room for knowing and intellect, where abstract ideas get hammered out and applied in the real world. It's the bridge, then, between that raw invention and the distilled wisdom later on.
Precisely. It's the period where that youthful intellectual curiosity gets channeled into systematic understanding and practical application. The focus shifts from just dreaming up possibilities or reacting on instinct to really digging in, acquiring and processing information, observing patterns empirically, and using your intellect to achieve tangible insights and solutions.
You start to build with your
Yeah,
knowledge.
you start building.
And this flows right into the next category.
Yeah.
How each age engages with life and creation itself. Youth, he says, is fundamentally about invention, play, art. That clicks the freedom to create just for the sake of creating, without worrying if it's useful or profitable yet.
Yes, youth is pure ideation, exploring without limits, spontaneous expression, like a kid building a sandcastle just for the joy of it, or a young artist driven purely by that aesthetic impulse.
Right.
But then, for middle age, the engagement becomes execution, work, science. This is where those youthful inventions get put into practice, where playful experiments mature into dedicated effort, where art might transform into systematic scientific inquiry or mastering a profession.
Getting it done.
It's the phase of sustained effort, disciplined application, tangible output. You're not just having an idea, you're making it happen, perfecting it, maybe doing it over and over again.
Okay, and old age.
Old age shifts to obstruction, rest, religion. Now, obstruction sounds a bit harsh, maybe?
Yeah, a little negative.
It reflects perhaps a move towards preservation, maybe resisting radical new ideas. There's a greater emphasis on reflection, spiritual thought, passing on traditions, rather than actively creating or working hard. It's more about maintaining than building something new.
So middle age really is the phase of execution and work, where ideas aren't just dreamed up, they're realized and sustained over time. This fits perfectly with that epoch of achievement and establishment idea you mentioned. It's literally where the rubber hits the road.
It absolutely is. It's the connection between imagining something and leaving a legacy. Middle age is where the sustained effort happens, careers are built, families raised, contributions to society become concrete. It's the engine room of civilization, you could say.
The engine room, I like that. Okay, next up, outlook and political stance. How does that evolve? Youth, he says, is defined by optimism and radicalism, an absorption in future, and this overwhelming desire for freedom. All forward-looking, rebellious, maybe a bit untethered.
And this is where the societal implications really become clear, right? Middle age shifts dramatically to meliorism, a gentle liberalism, absorption in present, and an emphasis on discipline.
Meliorism, can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. Meliorism is the belief that the world can be made better, not that it will automatically get better, but that human effort can and should work towards improving things. It's different from youthful optimism, which might just be this naive belief that things will get better somehow without much effort from you.
Oh, okay, more active.
Yes, meliorism suggests active, pragmatic work towards improvement, often within the systems we already have. It's tempering that youthful radicalism into a more nuanced, less extreme liberalism that wants reform within established structures.
Hmm.
This gentle liberalism, as Durant cleverly notes somewhere else, is often softened with the consciousness of a bank account,
Yeah,
implying that having something to lose makes you maybe less keen on tearing everything down.
makes sense.
The focus on the present reflects a practical need to manage and improve current realities, rather than just dreaming about some distant future.
In old age.
Old age then often leans towards pessimism and conservatism, an absorption in past and a desire for authority, reflecting a tendency maybe to resist change, lament the present, look back to traditions and past glories.
That gentle liberalism really does sound like a pragmatic middle ground, willing to improve things, but maybe without the wrecking ball, a kind of measured idealism.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay, finally, he talks about personal qualities and stability changing. Youth, he says, has courage, but also vacillation. That rings true.
It does, doesn't it? The courage of youth lets you take bold risks, experiment, step into the unknown without fear. But often it lacks a clear, consistent direction, leading to indecision, wavering, what he calls vacillation. You might be brave enough to jump, but not quite sure where you're going to land or how to get there consistently.
Right. Lots of energy, maybe not enough focus yet.
Exactly. Middle age, on the other hand, embraces prudence and stability. This is the period where experience, often gained from those youthful jumps and stumbles, starts to inform your decisions. Choices become more cautious, more thought through, leading to a greater sense of steadiness, reliability. There's a solid grounding here, a kind of internal compass that's very different from youthful impulsiveness.
And old age, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, can sometimes lead to timidity and stagnation, where that caution becomes so extreme it stops you from doing anything at all. And the desire for stability turns into this rigid resistance to any movement or change, like getting stuck.
Yeah, petrification almost.
Mhm.
It's clear from this whole table, Durant sees middle age as this unique period of balance. Youthful courage tempered by practical prudence. Raw ambition channeled into actual work. It really is framed as that key moment of establishment. Building on youth, but with new wisdom. Hashtag tag 3. The psychological landscape of middle age.
Mm.
Okay, with that framework set up, let's dig deeper into the psychological side of middle age. Durant looks at it with this almost clinical yet kind of empathetic eye. He notes, perhaps there's some synchronism here with the cycle of sex, which reaches its zenith at about 32, midway between puberty and menopause.
Mm.
It sounds like he's connecting this biological peak with a shift towards a more settled, maybe less tumultuous state of mind.
He absolutely is. That observation suggests that just as those raw biological reproductive drives hit their peak, maybe a certain calming effect starts to settle in, perhaps allowing energy to be rechanneled away from just pure instinctual pursuit towards something more deliberate, more purposeful.
Like nature nudging you towards responsibility.
Almost, yeah. Like nature itself encourages a shift from purely instinctual to a more deliberate, responsible phase. And importantly, this biological shift is mirrored by a big economic one. Durant says, as we find a place in the economic world, the rebellion of youth subsides.
Ah, stability kicks in.
Exactly. That newfound economic stability, having a career, a steady income, maybe some assets, it fundamentally changes your priorities, your perspective. He uses that fantastic analogy. We disapprove of earthquakes when our feet are on the earth.
That's great.
When you've invested in a home, a stable job, maybe a family, you want continuity, stability above all. You're not looking for disruptive upheaval or radical change anymore, not like maybe you were in your youth. The stakes just feel too high.
That makes perfect sense. More to lose, so you want things stable.
Yeah.
And this leads to that change in political outlook too, right? From youthful radicalism, Durant says, you move to a gentle liberalism.
Precisely. He describes this really interesting shift as radicalism softened with the consciousness of a bank account.
Still got that sharp edge, hasn't he?
He does. It's not necessarily throwing out all your youthful ideals or rejecting progress entirely, but it's a pragmatic adjustment. That burning desire for sweeping, revolutionary change often gives way to preferring smaller, incremental improvements. And it's not just about literal money, it's about having something to lose: status, comfort, the delicate balance of your established life.
Right.
After 40, Durant notes, we prefer that the world should stand still, that the moving picture of life should freeze into a tableau. There's this powerful longing for stillness, predictability, for things to just be for a while without constant disruption or needing to adapt to new things all the time.
So this growing conservatism in middle age, it has two sides, according to Durant. He says it's partly the result of wisdom, which perceives the complexity of institutions and the imperfections of desire. That sounds fair enough.
Yeah, that's the charitable view.
But then he adds this more cynical, pretty biting observation. It's also partly the result of lowered energy and corresponds to the immaculate morality of exhausted men.
Ouch. That's quite a jab. Hinting that maybe virtue is just being too tired for vice.
It is a pretty unsparing jab, isn't it? And it says a lot about Durant's often unvarnished, sometimes cynical take on human nature. The wisdom part makes sense, of course. It comes from experience, from learning that simple plans often backfire, that human desires are complicated, contradictory, never fully satisfied, that hard-won wisdom naturally leads to being more cautious about change. But he brilliantly balances that with the stark reality of declining physical energy, mental energy.
Right, you just don't have the same drive. Exactly. When you have less energy, when you're drained, radical action, constant agitation, even youthful troublemaking, it just becomes less appealing, almost impossible. So the immaculate morality he talks about might just be not having the energy to rebel or chase illicit desires or challenge the status quo.
Morality born of exhaustion, not enlightenment.
Pretty much. A very uncomfortable thought, maybe, but one worth considering.
And this lowered energy isn't just about politics. It's a really profound, often jarring personal discovery, isn't it? That sudden, unsettling realization that the reservoir of strength no longer fills itself after we draw upon it. That must be genuinely unsettling, maybe even frightening for people. That feeling of being invincible, or at least endlessly capable, slowly draining away.
It is a critical and often deeply painful realization. It marks a huge psychological turning point. For some years, this discovery darkens life for many people. There's a period of mourning, almost grieving, for what feels like this finite, rapidly shrinking resource, your own energy, your own vitality.
You start feeling your limits.
Exactly. People begin to mourn the brevity of the human span and the impossibility of wisdom or fulfillment within so limited a circle. It's the point where, as Durant puts it so starkly, we stand at the top of the hill, and without straining our eyes, we can see, at its bottom, death.
Wow, that's bleak.
It is bleak. This direct, undeniable confrontation with your own mortality can be a profound psychological shock, especially after feeling like you had endless possibilities dismissing death when you were young. It's not abstract anymore. It's a real, visible destination.
So how do people cope with that grim existential realization? According to Durant, do they just despair, or do they find ways to handle it?
Durant suggests a few common ways people cope, and each one reveals something about the human spirit, I think. One is this surge of renewed effort. We work all the harder to forget that it is waiting for us.
Distraction through work.
Exactly. Work becomes this powerful distraction, a way to fill the time left with purpose, achievement, maybe even build a legacy that outlives you. It's like a race against time.
Okay, what else?
Another way is to turn eyes back in memory to the days that were not darkened with its presence. Looking back to the carefree, seemingly immortal past, finding comfort in nostalgia.
Reliving the good old days.
And finally, there's this longing for the vitality of others.
Yeah.
We revel in the company of the young because they cast over us, transiently and incompletely, their divine carelessness of mortality.
Trying to catch some of their youthful energy.
Yeah, their youthful exuberance, their apparent invincibility. It offers this temporary relief, a vicarious escape from your own finite life. It's a bittersweet kind of comfort.
So it's this complex mix, frantic denial through work, comforting nostalgia, and sort of living vicariously through the young. But ultimately, despite all these struggles with decline and mortality, Durant offers a clear path to fulfillment in this stage, right? He circled back, concluding that it is in work and parentage that middle age finds its fulfillment and its happiness.
Yes, that's the powerful summary, the deep conclusion to this whole challenging psychological picture. Despite the undeniable hurdles, the declining energy, the awareness of death, the cooling passions, Durant points to these fundamental human drives, creation and nurturing, as the ultimate lasting sources of meaning and contentment in middle age.
Work and family.
Right. Work provides purpose, achievement, structure. Parentage, maybe even more profoundly, offers this direct, tangible link to the future, a way to transcend your own finite life through the next generation. It's a grounded, practical, deeply meaningful kind of happiness, very different from the bubbly, often fleeting joy of youth. It's a profound shift in what happiness even means.
Now, to bring all these abstract, sometimes uncomfortable ideas down to earth, Durant paints this incredibly vivid, relatable picture of middle age. He uses the commuter. He doesn't just say he's like middle age. He states the commuter is the picture of middle age.
Yeah.
It's such a mundane but powerful archetype, isn't it? A kind of everyman figure for this stage.
It's an absolutely brilliant literary move, precisely because it's so mundane. The commuter embodies that daily grind, that mix of routine, slightly faded aspiration, and subtle disillusionment that often marks middle age for so many. His day starts in a rush. He breakfasts between headlines and kisses his wife and children a hurried goodbye.
You immediately see the time pressure.
Exactly. The constraints, the divided attention, prioritizing efficiency over maybe real connection. There's this subtle undertone of duty overriding pure desire already.
And the journey itself. It's like a mini epic of the mundane. He captures the unpleasantness so well. He rushes to the station, exchanges meteorological platitudes with his duplicates along the platform,
Look at
reads his paper, walks precariously through lower Manhattan's fruit and filth, and clings like a drowning man to a subterranean strap while he is whirled with seismic discomfort to his toil.
Yeah.
You can almost feel the grime and the jostling.
It truly captures that essence of the daily struggle, doesn't it? Feeling like a small cog in a huge machine, the sheer physical effort of just enduring the commute. And then he gets to work, and Durant notes, his importance subsides. Instead of great decisions to be made, he finds, for the most part, a soporific routine of repetitious details.
The work itself becomes routine.
Yeah, this is crucial, maybe a bit depressing. The work, which we just said was a source of fulfillment, often becomes this predictable, sometimes mind-numbing series of tasks. Those grand ambitions from youth wanting to make a big impact. Often they just shrink down to managing trivial stuff.
But he keeps going.
Yes. Despite this, he plods through them loyally. This loyalty to duty, this perseverance, even when it's repetitive and maybe feels unimportant, that speaks powerfully to the disciplined, responsible nature middle age often demands. It's not glamorous, but it's steadfast.
The evening return is just as vivid, but it sets up this kind of anticlimax that I think a lot of people can relate to. He looks longingly at the clock all day, thinking how pleasant it will be to spend the evening with his family.
Building it up in his head.
Right. He rides home, maybe unwinds a bit, exchanges alcoholic audacities with his duplicates on the train, assumes this philosophic dignity, thinking about, baseball scores.
The important stuff.
But then, the punchline hits you. At 6, he is home, and at 8, he wonders why he hurried so. Oof. What does that quiet tension between anticipation and the actual reality of home life tell us?
It speaks to that common, often unspoken disillusionment in middle age, the gap between the idealized expectation and the mundane reality. That vision of domestic bliss, the warm welcome, the peaceful evening, often just bumps up against the quiet, unglamorous truth of everyday life. The excitement you built up, the yearning to escape the grind, it often gets deflated by just the sheer familiarity, the routine of the evening. It's not that he doesn't love his family, but that emotional high of reunion just isn't there. It's a quiet letdown, a stark contrast to those vivid romantic dreams of youth.
He hurried home for this.
Exactly.
Go.
It makes you wonder where the real solace and excitement are found at this stage.
And this sense of disillusionment, or maybe just passion cooling off, it extends right into his intimate relationships too. Love and marriage. Durant observes the commuter has explored the depths of love and has found the war that lurks in its gentle guise. The war that lurks in its gentle guise. That's a very striking, maybe uncomfortable phrase. What's he getting at there?
It's a raw, honest acknowledgement, I think, that love, especially in a long-term marriage, isn't always smooth, isn't always tender. It has its conflicts, its compromises, its little daily battles simmering under the surface of affection. It's the friction of two lives woven together, the inevitable clash of wills and desires that exists alongside deep affection.
The reality behind the romance.
Exactly. And alongside this understanding, familiarity and fatigue have cooled the fever in his flesh. That intense, all-consuming passion of early love has naturally subsided, replaced by something more temperate, less thrilling maybe, but hopefully deeper. But this natural cooling gets complicated by the stark contrast in his daily life. His wife, maybe understandably, does not dress for him, perhaps seen in a disheveled negligee at home. Yet all day at work, he sees other women colleagues, strangers powdered and primped and curled, whose charming knees and inviting frocks and encouraging smiles and aphrodisiac perfumes leave him hovering hourly over the abysses of disloyalty.
Wow. That's intense, an hourly struggle.
It's a powerful, almost agonizing description of that internal battle between duty and desire.
So how does he handle that? Does he resolve it or just live with the tension?
He doesn't really resolve it dramatically. Instead, he kind of embodies this very pragmatic compromise, a weary acceptance almost. He tries hard to love his wife and kisses her regularly and promptly twice a day.
Out duty.
It feels like an act of duty, commitment, deliberate maintenance, maybe more than just raw, spontaneous passion. It's love as a choice, an action rather than an overwhelming feeling. And then Durant adds, almost casually with that wry humor, that he has an escapade or two, but quickly discovers the dullness in adultery.
The grass isn't greener.
Exactly. This is such a crucial, insightful point about desire. The forbidden fruit often turns out to be nowhere near as exciting or fulfilling as you imagined. The chase, the idea, is often better than the reality.
So he learns his lesson.
Seems so. He thanks God that he has not been detected, and crucially, he reconciles himself to prose.
There's that phrase again.
It's the ultimate surrender of that youthful poetic ideal. He accepts the unglamorous, ordinary, sometimes tedious reality of his life. It's letting go of the thrilling stories and just embracing the everyday.
Reconciles himself to prose. It's brilliant. It highlights that pragmatic acceptance, not defeat maybe, but just accepting a different kind of truth. So with passion cooled, grand ambitions quieted, what does the commuter do with his free time, those hours away from work?
His pursuits become remarkably, well, domestic and familiar, centered on routine and comfort. He mows his lawn, plays cards, and golf.
Standard middle-aged guy stuff.
Pretty much. Activities that take some effort but don't require huge ambition. There's a brief dip into public life. He dabbles amateurishly in local politics. Maybe a last flicker of that youthful idealism to change the world.
Right.
But typically for this stage, Durant says, the last recreation soon sours on him. The messy reality of politics, much like the war in love, just becomes too much effort, too complex, too demanding for his diminished energy and idealism.
Right. Too much hassle.
So in the end, he concludes that the wisest words of tongue or pen were uttered by Candide. We must cultivate our garden.
Back to Voltaire.
Exactly. This signifies this profound retreat from big societal ambitions or even a personal quest for more external excitement or validation. He literally plants potatoes and achieves a moderate peace.
What does that final retreat mean? Cultivating your garden, planting potatoes? Is it giving up? Is it defeat? Or is it some kind of hard-won wisdom?
It's presented, I think, fundamentally as a form of hard-won wisdom, but it's a quiet wisdom, maybe even a resigned one. It's accepting limits, recognizing that deep contentment might not be found in external conquests or grand romances or changing the whole world. Instead, it's found in the manageable, tangible world right around you.
Focusing on what you can control.
Precisely. Cultivating one's garden becomes this powerful metaphor for focusing on your immediate world, finding peace and meaning in the close at hand, the domestic, the ordinary, the practical. It's not that exhilarating, bubbly happiness of youth, but a deeper, more sustainable, moderate peace. A practical, enduring contentment that sees the value in what's right there, rather than always chasing something distant and elusive.
Making your own small corner of the world the best it can be and finding peace in that.
Exactly that.
Okay, now Durant shifts focus to the woman's journey in middle age. And it's a different path, but just as insightful. He starts by portraying a certain type of married woman before motherhood, sometimes seen by her husband, pretty cynically, as just an economical substitute for a maid. That's a rather stark, almost transactional view of a spouse, isn't it?
It certainly is stark. And yeah, unromantic, setting this somewhat cynical tone right away. Durant describes a woman who, if her housework, like cooking and cleaning, is done for her, maybe by servants, maybe by a very dedicated husband, is left free, respectable, and functionless all the livelong day.
Functionless. That's a really provocative word.
It is, isn't it? It implies this perceived lack of inherent purpose or utility in that traditional domestic sphere, especially if she's not doing the direct labor herself. Her time in this picture is then spent on personal upkeep, making her toilet, and broader social things like reforming the proletariat.
Reforming the proletariat.
It paints this picture of a life that might look privileged on the surface, but maybe hints at a kind of void underneath.
Yeah, and her intellectual and social activities are described so vividly. She reads about hygiene and maternity, and then, with that classic Durant wit, tells poor mothers how to bring up babies when the harassed women merely wish to learn how to stop their coming.
Yeah, a bit out of touch maybe.
She also attends extension classes, organizes clubs, and listens with romantic patience to peripatetic novelists and philosophers. So she's labeled functionless in that traditional domestic sense, but she's actually incredibly busy with social and intellectual stuff, always trying to improve herself or others. What's the paradox there?
The paradox is exactly that contrast. Perceived idleness versus very real, if maybe sometimes misguided, engagement. While Durant might paint her as functionless regarding daily chores, she's clearly not passive. She's active, intellectually curious, maybe searching for meaning and purpose outside the traditional home, which back then might not have offered much stimulation for a woman of her class.
Right, seeking something more.
Her activities, from social reform, however naive, to learning, they suggest this hunger for knowledge, a desire to contribute, a drive for self-actualization. She wants to be somebody, do something meaningful, even if her advice on babies might be unwelcome or impractical for women actually struggling. It's a complex picture of a woman striving for significance in a world that might not offer clear paths for it, maybe with a touch of well-meaning, privileged naivete.
But then her whole life changes monumentally, almost overnight. Durant describes it so briefly, dramatically. And then suddenly, somehow, she is a mother. This feels like the real turning point for the woman, mirroring how marriage changed everything for the man. It seems like the ultimate answer to feeling functionless.
Absolutely. The arrival of a child changes everything for her. It's seismic. It utterly redefines her identity and purpose. Her first emotions, Durant notes, are this complex mix, pleased and terrified.
Pleased and terrified, sounds about right.
There's a real fear of childbirth, especially if she hasn't had wholesome work that would have fitted her physically, which, by the way, hints at a subtle critique from Durant, right? That a life of too much ease might leave you unprepared for the most basic, demanding human experience.
Interesting.
But despite the fear, the physical challenge, there's this immediate, profound sense of identity and maturity that just overshadows everything else. She is proud, too, and feels a new maturity. She is a woman now and not an idle girl, not a domestic ornament or a sexual convenience anymore.
Wow. That perceived functionlessness is just gone, obliterated.
Completely obliterated, replaced by this profound, undeniable purpose.
That's an incredibly powerful statement of self-actualization, isn't it? From being seen, maybe even seeing herself as functionless or just an economical substitute, she finds her true purpose and identity in the most fundamental way. It's like a rebirth.
Indeed. Motherhood, for Durant, is the ultimate crucible, the defining moment that solidifies her transition into full womanhood in middle age. She goes through her ordeal bravely. When she sees her child, she weeps for a moment and then marvels at the child's unprecedented beauty.
That moment of meeting the baby.
The tears are that emotional release, fear, pain, overwhelming love. But the marveling is the dawn of this unconditional love, this profound primal connection. From that moment, her dedication is absolute, all-consuming. Fondly, she slaves for it through busy days and fragmentary nights, never having time to look for happiness, and yet showing in her eyes a new radiance and delight.
Never having time to look for happiness, but finding it anyway.
Exactly. This last part is crucial. She's no longer actively chasing happiness as some abstract goal. Instead, she finds this deep, intrinsic, often exhausting delight and radiance in the very act of nurturing, serving, sacrificing for this new life. It's a happiness that emerges from purpose, not from pursuit.
And this amazing transformation isn't just for the mother. Durant then beautifully turns to the father. He asks these rhetorical questions, hinting at the father's own shift. And now, what is this new tenderness in the father's eyes, this new gentleness in the touch of his hands, this unwanted sincerity in his embrace, this new willingness to labor and cherish and protect? It's like the child unlocks something deep in him too, fundamentally changing that commuter we were just talking about.
It absolutely connects back to his earlier point about work and parentage being the ultimate fulfillment for both genders in middle age. The child gives the father's work and protection this concrete, undeniable purpose. It transforms his earlier moderate piece, just cultivating his garden, into a much deeper commitment to cultivating a human life.
So it gives meaning to the prose.
Exactly. His earlier disillusionment with the dullness of prose, the routine of work, the cooling passion, it finds its profound answer here. The child offers a new center, a new focus for all his efforts, his affections. This huge transformation in both parents, this profound shift in priorities and emotions that a child brings, leads Durant to his powerful final question. It feels like the heart of this whole deep dive. Perhaps here in the child, where one never thought to seek it, is the center of life and the secret of content.
That's an incredibly poignant, resonant thought to end this section on. It suggests that deep, lasting fulfillment in middle age isn't about grand achievements or chasing romantic ideals, but often about the quiet, absorbing responsibilities and the profound, unexpected love found in raising the next generation. It's a complete redefinition of what happiness truly means, isn't it? Maybe not elation, but a state of deep purpose and belonging.
It is. It moves beyond those fleeting pleasures or ego-driven goals to something far more fundamental, more enduring. It's contentment rooted in contribution, in self-sacrifice, in the continuation of life itself. It's a powerful antidote to that earlier disillusionment, the commuter's mundane life, the confrontation with mortality. The child becomes this focal point that just reorients the entire world, bringing a quiet joy and profound meaning that, Durant suggests, you might never have found otherwise. Hashtag outro rating.
Wow. So we've journeyed through Will Durant's profound, often pretty unflinching insights into middle age and fallen leaves. From that stark moment youth ends with marriage, to complex shifts in responsibility, the psychological changes, and those, well, often unexpected fulfillments.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen how middle age, far from being just a plateau or a decline, really is presented as the epoch of achievement and establishment, a time when people move from youthful idealism, that poetry, to practical action and the quiet acceptance of prose.
Right. Finding that peace maybe not in chasing abstract happiness, but in cultivating their own metaphorical gardens.
Yeah, whether that's through work, the profound purpose of family, or just embracing everyday life.
And Durant's observations, even though written decades ago, they still resonate so deeply today, don't they? Offering this timeless, often challenging view on a stage of life we don't always examine closely.
Definitely critical, yeah.
He doesn't sugarcoat the struggles, the lower energy, facing mortality, passions cooling, but he ultimately points to the deep meaning found in dedication, responsibility, and especially in that transformative, often surprising power of having children. His work really encourages us to see the beauty and purpose in the ordinary, the disciplined, the deeply relational parts of a mature life.
So as we reflect on Durant's powerful picture of middle age, especially that idea of contentment found in the absorbing, often selfless act of nurturing the next generation, it raises an important question for you, our listener. Is true contentment found not in that relentless, often elusive chase for happiness as a feeling, but maybe more in the deep absorption of meaningful work?
Or the quiet acceptance of prose over poetry.
And that profound, often unexpected purpose found in raising the next generation. What aspect of this deep dive into middle age resonates most with your own understanding of life's evolving journey?
Lots to think about there.
Absolutely. We hope this deep dive into Durant's Fallen Leaves has given you plenty to ponder.